This week on Today's Homeowner, the Kuppersmith project shifts into high gear with some fine-tuning of the living spaces and some major changes for the outside of the property. If you miss the next 30 minutes, you'll miss a lot. The Kuppersmith project is the renovation of an 85-year-old classic American Tudor home. The Kuppersmith family lived here for over a half a century, and we're keeping the character of the home while we make it more functional and efficient for a typical family in the 21st century. We've added a little more space, some great low-maintenance materials, and a technological feature here and there to make life easier. One of those features is the motorized screens that are being installed right now. This system from Phantom Screens is based on a horizontally mounted motorized spindle which is recessed into a cavity built above the opening to be covered. The screen will roll on and off the spindle as it goes up or down. Guiding it smoothly along that path is the trick, and this metal frame at the end of each screen will do that as it glides up and down the tracks hidden inside the columns. When it's all together, there are multiple test runs to ensure that the travel of the screens is smooth and steady, and each is responding properly to its wireless controlling. Now that all of the rolling screens are complete here on the back porch, this area of the house is pretty much complete. We have a few details here and there that we're dealing with, but outside, nothing is being done because we've had such bad weather. It's actually created a little pond out back in the area that we excavated for our paver patio, so have a little bit of drying time out here before any more work can be completed. But inside, there's plenty to do. The biggest change is the installation of our new interior door units, which have finally arrived. The side casing is nailed on before the unit is set in place. Then the detailed header work can be done once the door is in the opening. The shaker style of the new 4-panel flat panel doors suits the character of this house perfectly, and once the guys trim them all out, they'll fit right in. The painting also continues inside, and here's a place where a do-it-yourselfer can pick up a tip or two. If you're masking the seam between walls and trim, be sure to work the tape down firmly with the flat edge of a putty knife. This keeps more of the paint from bleeding under the tape. If you use a tape like this stuff from Frog Tape, the line will be even cleaner because its adhesive formula prevents paint from sticking underneath it. We've also got big changes happening in the bathrooms as the solid surface surrounds arrive. Moving these larger panels is a job, not just because of the weight, but the material is more delicate because folks at DeNova have scored the panels to look like they're made of 10 by 15 inch subway tiles. These pieces are secured to the walls of the showers and tubs with adhesive so that the subway tile pattern continues uninterrupted. That's the kind of detail that makes a big difference in the finished look of a room. That includes getting Mark to lay out the exact locations of the electronic controls for the Moen IO digital shower and tub systems before the panels are cut and drilled. Once the solid surface is in place, the tile setters can go to work on the bathroom floors. This porcelain tile they're installing, called alabaster, is a slightly lighter color than the solid surface material that surrounds it. To keep that from getting real monotonous in this large master bath, they're adding a contrasting design detail created with ribbon tiles. Boy, this floor is going to look great once they finish all of the grout work on it. You know, something I've always been curious about is how can a decorator put together all these different surfaces and make it work? You know, we're working with the Better Homes and Gardens design team, and somehow they've got it figured out. I mean, look at this. We've got countertop surface here, we have floor, we have walls, we've got paint colors going up. It's going to look awesome. Hey, let's check out this week's simple solution with my buddy Joe.
Theoretically, the inside of a sink cabinet shouldn't be getting wet, but in the real world that's just not the case. Too often there's a leak either from the trap or the faucet, and if water sits on the floor, it'll eventually rot it out. So here's a way to prevent that. Buy some vinyl tiles. They're only about $1 a piece, and have a peel and stick adhesive on the back. Comes with the paper backing, you just peel it off. It's a simple installation, it's as simple as just pressing it down. This is a very strong adhesive, you'd be surprised. Sticks right down. It is important to make sure you clean the cabinet floor really well, remove all dust so that the glue will stick. Now here's one that I trimmed earlier. I had to cut off about an inch of tile so it would fit. We're going to slide that in the back. Butt the seams up really tightly, as tight as you can get them. Press it down. Okay, and we just keep going like that all the way across the floor of the cabinet. Here's the next one. This is a full size, and I made the cuts in the back just so you'd have a full size tile right up front. Again, butt them really tightly together. Look at that seam, it's almost invisible. Okay, so I'm just going to continue like that across the whole floor. Now in the end, what you end up with is a floor that's not only water resistant, but really easy to clean.
Put that in. Hey, you know, the folks that end up living here in the Kuppersmith home may want a swimming pool, but this isn't exactly what they'll have in mind. This is where we excavate it out. We're going to put crushed stone down, and our pavers will go here. The weather's a heck of a lot better than it's been the last couple days. Still a little bit cold, but we're going to try to use a small pump to pump this water out so that when the guys show up in the next day or so, at least they're starting with a fairly dry area for the pavers. Now, with the weather being a little bit better, we have been able to make a lot of progress on our driveway out front. Our concrete contractor, Mike Thompson, has completed his forms and is getting the concrete die ready while he waits for the first concrete truck to arrive.
We're going to throw some color in the bag because it's real hard to put the color in the truck out of the pails. So we're going to put them in the bags, and that way we can just take the bag and throw the whole bag into the truck and let it mix in, and you get the color easier distributed through the concrete. It doesn't get caught on the walls and that kind of thing inside the truck. The paper bag just disintegrates inside, hopefully. And you know, there's time we'll find a piece and we just take it out, but most of the time it disintegrates and the color mixes in really well, and it's just the best way I've found to do it. But you know, this is for 6 yards of concrete right there. That's going to be one of the trucks. We've got it split up between 2 trucks, 6 on each one. So 1 pail for 2 yards of concrete for this particular color. Sometimes it's a pail per yard, sometimes it's two pails per yard. This is a lighter tan, so 1 bag in that truck, and then the next truck comes, we'll have the other bag ready and throw it in there.
Once Mike is happy with the color mix of the concrete, they begin to pour. But the first stuff out of the truck is a little too thick to flow into the forms very well. That means the driver will have to add a little water into the mix.
It looks a little stiff. Let's just throw 6 gallons in it.
But Mike wants to do this very sparingly because adding water can potentially dilute the color.
Yeah, let's add, I hate to do it, man. I'm worried about washing that color out, but let's add another 6 gallons to it.
If the concrete from this 6-yard batch is going to match the next 6 yards, he has to make sure the variables are kept to a minimum. And the amount of water added is a big variable.
4,000 PSI's got a lot of cement in it. Start turning it with that color, it heats up, it's hard to get it.
Oh, I got you, yeah. Oh, yeah, I mean, you put so much powder in there that it dry it right out. Yeah.
And then you're spinning it, creating a lot of heat.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
That makes coloring concrete this way a little tricky, but as Mike told us, it still has some significant advantages.
You put it in the truck, if there's a scratch or something done to the concrete, the color's through and through. Also on the sides, if you see any sides anywhere, that sort of thing. The other alternative is a color hardener that you cast out on top. That's one of the other choices. You do that during the pour, it's a little more work, but the color tends to be a little more vibrant sometimes with that. So you've got some pros and cons with both of them. This just tends to be one of the easier ways when you're doing it. You just throw it in the truck and let it mix.
As hard as these guys work moving the concrete around, letting the truck do some of the work makes a lot of sense. Besides, they've already done a mountain of work just building this elaborate system of forms.
Man, I just can't believe how intricate all of the forms are. I mean, there's hundreds of pieces of wood that makes up all of this. Might be a little confusing, but let me show you what we have. Basically, you see that we have 1x4, 1x4, and a little trough is created there. And if you look at this, the outside of the 1x4 and the outside of the 1x4 here is perfect width for that paver to sit down nice and flush once everything's completely dry in here. Now, one of the things we had on the original design they had it to where this trough continued all the way out here. And what that created is that this concrete would come to a real fine point. And Mike suggested that we do this and make it a little different so that we didn't have that weak point right in this point in the concrete. So using this little rubber form that he has, we're able to create a nice radius here, keeping the concrete thick so that we won't have a weak point in the driveway.
Speaking of weak concrete, that's another result of adding too much water to the mix. Now, we haven't added enough here for that to be a problem, and hopefully neither will the color match. But Mike has the concrete flowing under the forms really well now, and that speeds things up.
Yeah, that's going under there real good right there, huh?
Besides, the areas inside the troughs will be covered with pavers, so they don't need to be finished smooth, just leveled off. Before long, they're screeding the mud off even with the top of the forms so that they can begin the finishing process. First, the bull float, then the hand trowels, and just when you think these guys are going to get a little break, the second truck arrives and the process starts all over again. Hey, while these guys stay busy with 6 more yards of fun, why don't you check out this week's Best New Product with Jody.
You know, when you're choosing outdoor furniture, you can see the options are endless. But there are a couple of things that you need to consider when you're thinking about what you want. First of all, do you want a dining room set? Do you want a living room set? What's your budget? What's your style? Take a look at this. This is a good example by Martha Stewart Living. This is cast aluminum, so it's great construction. It's not going to rust. It's not going to break down over time. It's got a glass top, and it's very decorative if you like that style. Another thing to consider, do I want stationary chairs? Or look at this, do I want to have a little bit of a swivel? And also, do I want to have cushions that are made from weather-resistant materials? Now, if you're not into the dining room scene and you want to create more of a living room scene for your outdoor living space, take a look at this right here. Now, what I like about it is that these pieces are sold individually and it's made to look like real wicker. But this one right here is actually synthetic, so it's not going to mildew, it's not going to break down, and it's very attractive. It just depends upon your style, your taste, and also your budget. You can create an outdoor living space that you will definitely be proud of.
We're right in the middle of pouring a rather unique looking front drive for the Kuppersmith project that should really be eye-catching. But while that's going on out front, Mark and his crew are involved in cleaning up several less visible details elsewhere. One of those is the gate into the backyard behind the garage. Now, this frame is steel, but the visible part of the gate will be the same Fiberon composite material used on the rest of the privacy fence. The principle here is the same as the Fiberon deck. Use a material for the outdoors that looks like wood that lasts longer without the constant maintenance that most wood surfaces require. It's a win-win.
Hey, this is one side of the house we haven't seen a whole lot. This is the west side. It's right up against the fence here, but we have just enough room for kind of tucking a few things out of the way, like air conditioning units. We'll have one here and one here. Another thing I want to show you, foundation vents. This is something we looked at last week, and they were all rusty, and I was showing you how we were putting them in. Well, since then, we've been able to sand everything off of it, a little bit of wire brushing. Then we sprayed it with a good quality metal primer. After that, we found another metal paint that matches the color of the trim that we have on the outside of the house. So these blend in very well and add just a nice little architectural touch to the house. Brings back a little bit of the old look to the home. Now, you don't think about spray painting very much when you're talking about a large project like this, but this really came in handy for all of our foundation vents. But inside, there's some serious painting going on.
With so much new wood in the house, now there's a lot of preparation work to be completed just about everywhere. We've added new doors and trim throughout the house, so all of that gets primed, puttied, and caulked as quickly as the paint crew can get to it. The areas that have already been prepped are now getting the finish coats applied. On a job of this size, the painting can be a monumental part of the process. So I asked our painting contractor, Steve Carey from CertaPro, if he had any words of wisdom for do-it-yourselfers.
Well, most folks think painting's easy. And when you take a small bathroom or a small room, sure, painting can be easy, but if you don't do it right, you'll end up with problems. And typically what I see is folks fail to pick good quality materials. They don't prime a surface. And the one that I always chuckle at is when a homeowner starts taking wallpaper off, and then they say, okay, it's time to call the experts, call CertaPro, because you walk into a room, half the wallpaper's off, it's a mess, and the homeowner's sitting there with a smile going, please help. And so that's when we come in and say it.
Now, you know, we have a lot of neighbors around here, a lot of people asking questions. A lot of them are surprised that there's actually a national franchise for painting. It's a great idea. Everybody thinks it's a real solution to an ongoing problem.
Right. Well, you know, what I like about CertaPro and the business is we're trying to professionalize a craft that needs a little bit of professionalization.
Right.
My crews come in with uniforms. You can see here, they got a great attitude.
Yeah, they do.
They stay on the job, and you know, our goal is to make sure it's an extraordinary experience for the homeowner, and most importantly, that the walls and the trim look the way you want them to look.
Getting that look started weeks ago with a visit to the Home Depot to check out paint chips, which was followed by some serious decision making. And now finally, Steve's crew is putting the color on the walls. That's a big milestone in a project like this. While these guys are rolling on the color, let's talk about thinking in color, thinking green.
You know, if everything you wore was the same color and if everything you ate was the same thing day after day, and if every square inch of your home were painted the same, well, it wouldn't take long before you would get sick of it. The sad news is that's the way a lot of people feel about the green movement. I can't say I blame them either. Unfortunately, so much of the green doctrine you hear comes from people or organizations who don't practice what they preach. And let's be honest, when a topic seems to be crammed down your throat all the time, it does lose its appeal. But don't let the push to jump on the bandwagon turn you away from what's right. At the core of green is the fact that we all have to do what we can do to preserve this world we live in for future generations. So forget about the bandwagons and movements. Hey, call it any color you want. Living eco-friendly is simply the right thing to do.
The renovation here on the Kuppersmith project has been going on now for almost 6 months. Our goal from the beginning has been to preserve the great character of this old place while we update the way it functions, so a family from this century can enjoy a home built in the last one. If you've been following the project, you know what an adventure it's been. Starting with an idea, peeling away everything that was broken and all the rough edges that wouldn't work for today's family, and finally starting to rebuild. Constantly questioning every bit of the process and the materials to be sure it was right for the character of the house and the comfort of the home's future owners.
This is our 8th show on the Kuppersmith project. That means I only have 5 more to go to complete everything, and this was a very big step. Getting the concrete driveway started so that we can complete all of that, and that will pave the way for us to complete all of our irrigation and the landscaping so that everything on the outside will be completely finished. Now inside, there's a lot of things that we have to do, and next week we'll show you how we're refinishing the antique heart pine floors inside and all the other details we need to complete so that we can give you the grand tour in just a few weeks. Hey, thanks for watching us here on today's Homeowner on the Kuppersmith Project. I'm Danny Lipford. We'll see you next week.
This project is going to be a big success thanks to our Kuppersmith project partners.
Oh yeah, we ought to be able